Welcome to the WSO Weekly Wrapup, where I talk with my team about the 5 most trending discussions in the Wall Street Oasis community. Enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome. It's the Weekly Wrapup again. It's May 18th. We're just gonna cover 2 topics today. Matt, you wanna get us started?
Sure. We're back from a hiatus here, all busy working, but glad to have everyone back on this call. First topic I found actually quite funny, trending this week was an individual talking about quitting after one day of interning. So he spent one day, felt like he couldn't do it, and started contemplating texting his boss. He wants to text him, I feel embarrassed, but IB isn't right for me. What do you guys think on this? I think this is something crazy. Some funny comments around just suck it up. It's only 8 weeks. But Pat, we'll start off with you. What do you think of something like this, quitting after one day of interning?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bad look. I think it can really ruin your reputation. Even if you do a poor job or like show up late, it's better than just like giving up after day one.
Yeah.
Just like do what you have to do for your mental health, just to like get it on your resume, so that you have something. So because like you don't want to go through the summer with nothing on your resume. So
The crazy thing though is it's just like, didn't this individual know what they're getting themselves into with investment banking? I'm pretty sure, you bring up investment banking to anyone, it's directly correlated with like long hours, or at least that preconception is. So I just find it so hard to believe that someone could get this role, do all this work, be smart enough to land the role, and then just it's completely catching them off guard after one day of being in the seat. I think there has to be something more to this. It just doesn't make sense. How much could get done in one single day? The first day is so much onboarding. You're doing training. You're talking about company intricacies. Like, what could have been so overwhelming that threw him off? I think
some guy asked, he's like, what was the final straw? Was it like setting up your Outlook signature? Like,
yeah,
that was too stressful.
Exactly. Like, that's what I mean. Like, you were smart enough to land the role, right? We see it's not easy to get an IB role, and then all of a sudden, after one day of interning, you quit. I think there's something being missed out. But I guess a cooler angle to look at this as, like, okay, so I guess if you do have to quit, what's the best way of going about this in a short time period? Let's not call it a day, because a day is a little bit aggressive. But let's say after 3 weeks of starting in a new role, you're not happy. What's the best way to kind of go about quitting? We'd love to kind of hear your guys' insights on that.
What do you think, Nabil?
I just think do it. I mean, why quit? Like, if you've done 2 weeks, it's just another few more. It's not that. That's the mentality, right? Like,
unless you're gonna have
just that little. I mean, yeah, it depends. I've seen people quit though in my first firm. Like, they just come in, work like a week, and then they're like, "Fuck this, it's not for me."
Yeah.
So they just leave. Yeah, they just don't return. So
that just speaks to like just not being an adult yet, like not being able to suck it up and like do the work. Because like most jobs are not glamorous. Most jobs you're eating some shit at some point, like especially when you're starting as
in the junior ranks. Yeah, the junior ranks, that's what it's really all about. You're gonna have to put in the sweat equity, right? Yeah, I think another point to also raise, and I think I saw some guy writing this in the forums, was also, the street, like what people call Wall Street, the street, like it's pretty tight knit community at the end of the day. Even though there's, what people think is maybe thousands of employees, like it's a very tight knit community. So if you're doing that, and if it was at like a bigger, well known bank or even a middle market, you may probably be blacklisted. So it's like, do you want to? You weigh the benefits and pros of quitting after such a short period of time, and just you suck it up for the 8 weeks and kind of get through it, so you're not blackballed? Or do you quit? Now you're potentially just blackballed, and you've really just written yourself off from any investment banking career in its entirety. So I think that's something to keep like front of mind as well, just a tight knit community that exists within the street. Have you guys seen that kind of work in your favor or against you, Pat? I mean, you spent some time on the street. You also agree it's pretty tight knit community, even though it's a pretty big industry in its entirety?
Yeah, you don't want to like just burn that bridge so fat. I mean, there's no upside. And even the bigger thing is like, if you can't get through, one day or even 8 weeks of an internship, if you get what you think after like thinking this is your dream job, it's probably something more mental with the person there, that they probably need therapy. Because or like something around like you're kind of glorifying things in your head. You maybe are a dreamer and like you think it's going to be a certain way, and you're like picturing it, and then you get there and reality hits that it's actually like hard work and it's not all fun, or most of it's not fun. And I think that's probably
watching a lot of Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
or like Billions or something like that, thinking you're gonna be like on these big deals. So like, I think it's more to like the mental capacity of somebody who's maybe just not been able to go through some pain. And if the internship, the internship is like usually more of a cakewalk too, because they're trying to put not hard and make it look better. So yeah, I think it's a pretty bad look if you quit after day one or week one or whatnot and you can't get through it. I just think even with other options, it doesn't mean you have to do it. It's just I think it's a good learning experience to just go through it, because you may actually learn more. It may change, your perception may change after one or 2 weeks.
Do you think
like going to the
people should
gym, when you first go to the gym, that first day is really hard. If you're used to like sitting on your ass and watching Netflix all day, and then suddenly like you have to go run 3 miles, it's gonna be.
Well, if anything, it's the next day that's the worst.
Yeah,
that's where you try to go to bed and you're just like, what the heck happened?
That's probably like what happens a lot to these kids. Like you're in college, you're having a blast, you're like having so much fun. You maybe go to a little bit of class, but then suddenly you're like in an office for like 8 to 10 hours, and it's like this huge shock to the system.
Yeah, not in track pants, not in a hoodie. You're suited up.
You're suited up. You're like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I can't sit here anymore. And like, what am I supposed to do? And,
you tell me I can't smoke my vape in here. What the heck is this place? But I think for anyone listening, guys, definitely don't do that. Of course, take care of your mental health. But yes, there's have certain expectations before you're getting into the workforce. It's not an easy role. But obviously that's why there's a lot of benefits to working in investment banking at the end of the day. But let's pivot to this next topic here. I actually think this one's my favorite for the week, just because I hear a lot of friends mentioning this to me. And then when I saw it on the forums here, I said we had to talk about this on our weekly call. So an interesting topic around people being uncomfortable to mention that they work on Wall Street, specifically investment banking, just given the fact that throughout the media or just over time, it's been a little bit what this individual referred to as like vilified, which makes sense to a certain extent. But I'd love to kind of hear, I guess we'll start with you, Nabil. What do you think about this? Do you have any individuals that kind of try to avoid mentioning that they're in investment banking? If you were in investment banking, would you feel the same way? We'd love to kind of get your input on this first.
Yeah, I guess they just don't like rub it in your face. But like if someone asks, it's mostly I work at this bank. They don't really say investment banking. The other thing is like the whole general public doesn't really know investment banking per se. Like if you're talking to someone on the street, like it's different. Like when you're working in financial circles, you can always say that. But if you're talking to like your granny or whatever, and you're saying investment banking, they're probably thinking like, unless they've been like exposed to it, it's hard to explain that, what is investment banking? How is it different from other kinds of banking, like corporate or whatever, like commercial or whatever. And that's like a thing that happens. But if you're in financial circles, like people just say whatever, like everyone knows who's doing what, so it doesn't matter.
I just think this is like in people's head more than it's reality.
Yeah.
I think if you just say, oh, I work in finance, and you leave it at that, and then if someone pushes further, then you can talk more about it. But like,
yes, I think it's actually, from what I hear from my friends, it's more so like, how do you explain it to an individual that's not like in a finance circle? To like Nabil's point, obviously, of course, like when we're all hanging out together and there's other bankers in the room, everyone's very open about having conversations like that.
So I help companies buy other companies. It's like, it's really easy.
Yeah, but I think it comes on the time when it's like we're out, whether we're at a restaurant, a bar, and you meet some people and they're like, oh, what do you do? And once you kind of go through that rabbit hole of like, oh, I'm an investment banker, well, what do you do? It's like, okay, how do I
say investment banking?
Explain this?
That's how you get around it. You don't say.
I think that's the problem, right? Because it's like, how do you explain this on an elementary level for everyone to understand what you essentially do, right? So I think that's where some of the uncomfort comes from. But I find it funny.
It reminds me of a thread of where like everyone was saying how their parents think they're like a bank teller, like
but that's also what you don't want people to think, right? Because you want to have enough like self-respect for yourself where you're like, I have a good job, but you don't want people to think, oh, I'm just working as a teller. But then the thing that comes into my head, well, you shouldn't really care what people think. I guess just people do at the end of the day. But yeah, to your point, you don't want people thinking you're just like a retail teller when you're working in high finance at one of the most coveted jobs possible, right?
Yeah, I think there's the reason it gets a bad rep is probably because there's some people like on the hardo side of things that are like puffing their chest out thinking they're the shit because they work in as an intern in investment banking. And then you have most people don't care. And if they do care, it's fine. I would just ignore it and try to let it flow, off your shoulders. They don't probably know enough and realize that, at the junior levels, especially, had nothing to do with the great financial crisis. It's not your fault. You're not evil. And
yes, exactly. But I think it's also, what it is? It's also just not necessarily the media. I think just like the movies, they glorify it and do make this industry at times look a little bit more like aggressive in terms of just the nature of the business.
Wolf of Wall Street, billions on HBO.
Exactly. Where it's like, so an individual watching Wolf of Wall Street, you're going to see the debauchery and the craziness, but I've never seen that, and that will not fly, especially nowadays. Like the firm will be canceled within minutes. So I think it's just, you hear investment banking and people just have that crazy lifestyle tied to it. But a lot of times you don't realize you're 10, 12 hours in front of your computer, just modeling away. That's really what the job entails for a lot of it. So I think it's also, they have this view of it being a much more crazy environment that I think it is. So I think that's also where some of the uncomfort comes from. I guess if maybe speaking with older individuals, I think when they mention it to the young kids, everyone's loving it. They're like, oh, it's crazy, it's wild. Right. So I think it's just interesting. A different point of view you don't even realize other people are feeling at times. I just found that interesting.
I would just say don't care so much what other people think and just, go back to life and have good friends that are close that understand how you are as a person outside of work, and don't let work define you. That's it.
Exactly.
Can you go out of, when you're in IB?
Even in IB. Even in IB. Hopefully you have some kind of semblance of a life outside of IB if you can. Try to maintain it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But anyways, guys, I think it was a good convo. Let's call it here. We'll be back next week to cover some more interesting topics in the forums.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Bye.
And thanks to you, my listeners at Wall Street Oasis. If you have any suggestions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to send them my way, patrick@wallstreetoasis.com. And until next time.